Hello everyone and welcome to a reading wrap up for one of the readathons that I participated in for the month of October. This particular one I am talking about is called Smutober. This is to read, you kind of had two options. One is that you can read any book that contains smut. Now for those of you who don't know, which this I had to learn a while ago, is that smut is basically an explicit romance book. Okay, and I say explicit because you have a couple of different versions of romance. You have the sweet romance, you have a YA romance, which generally with a young adult romance, it's not going to contain anything that's sexually explicit because it is meant for young readers. So these smut books, or spicy is what they're sometimes called, are definitely for those that are 18 years old or older, so 18 plus or older, because they are going to become sexually explicit. So they can be a standard romance all the way through an erotic. So just depends on your flavor of romance. But smut, you're reading something that has sexually explicit scenes. So open door sex, everything's described. So this took place for the entire month of October. And so you could either read any smut, or for those of you who like myself, like the actual prompts, they did submit five prompts, and there was one group read. So you had 6 books. This is hosted by 3 people: Krystal from Bond Book Reviews, Brittany from Brittany Loves Reading, and Neva, I probably said that wrong, I apologize, from Reading with Neva, I'm guessing is how that's said. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the prompts. Again, you can read any smut, but I went with the prompts. So there will be, so in the thumbnail you'll see I'm holding up 2 books, and that's it, just 2 physical books. Everything else that I read was an ebook for this particular readathon. So let's start with the group read. For this one I read Halloween Encounter by Sibley Stamps. This is part of an ongoing, I think it's still ongoing, I'm not positive. There's I want to say around 22 books in this. It's a monster romance. This particular one is Alien. It takes place at Halloween. And this one was written by Sibley Stamps, but each book in this series, now the author may have written, a handful out of this series, but there are various authors for the entire series. This definitely is an erotica. It is a novella. For this one you are following, I want to say her name was Nora, could be wrong on that, and I think it was Pascal for the male. The male lead is coming from outer space. He's supposed to avoid Earth. He is wanting to be a scientist, but he has to land because his spaceship starts to malfunction. So he does have to land on Earth to get supplies to fix his ship. He is, I don't remember the name of the species, but he has tentacles on his back. And he does talk about at the beginning how if he encounters a fated mate situation, which this is a fated mates romance, they can kind of read each other's thoughts. So they have some, I'm blanking on the word, psychological connection, and that's not the word I'm looking for, but anyway. So he meets, again, I believe her name is Nora. This does take place while she is in college. There is a campus Halloween party. She just wants to stay home. She's had a recent breakup. She does not want to go party, but she does get tricked into dressing in a costume by her best friend. Like, she's basically, what happens is she's going to take a shower, things disappear. So the only clothes that she has left is this Halloween costume, which is a slutty version of something. I don't remember what the costume was, but it doesn't matter. So she ends up meeting this alien, thinks at first it's a costume. He's purple, he's got tentacles, and then she realizes that aliens actually are in fact real, and they end up having sex on a spaceship, and it is a fated mates. I gave it 4 stars. So then we are now into the prompts. Prompt number 1 is to read a book that has an orange and black cover. For this one I read Burn for Jack, written by Aiden Pierce. Ebook version, I gave this one 4 stars as well. This one also takes place on Halloween. I don't remember the main female character's name, but she is basically, she makes a bet with someone that's still hanging around with teenagers, but he's like 21 or 22. You do have a lot of underage drinking in this. You have an attempted rape scene, so do be aware of that. This is also a novella. And basically the town story is that one of Aiden, or not Aiden, the female character, one of her ancestors basically met in this cornfield or somewhere and had sex with this one guy. They were going against this very religious area. I mean, think Puritans type situation. And they were basically burned at the stake or hung or something. And I think it was burned at the stake. And the male makes a deal with the devil to protect his love. When the fire is done, they find his body, but not hers. And so the town story goes that it is suspected that Jack appears every Halloween night looking for his love. And the town theory is that the lady that he had sex with clear back then will reincarnate, and then they're supposed to meet and have sex. This does get very explicit. There's a lot of sex in this. There's also a bit of voyeurism as well. So, but it was fun. Okay, moving on. Prompt number 2 was Halloween item on the cover. For this one, I went with the ebook called Queens and Monsters. This one I'm saying Halloween item on the cover because there's a man's body on the cover, like from his waist to his shoulders. And I'm saying that's the Halloween item because he is a vampire. Now they are called something else in this world, like a shaman or something like that. And you can be born as a human, but then you awaken. And this one gal awakens, and it sets this shockwave through the shaman world because of how powerful she is supposedly is and doesn't even know it. They are in houses. You have the house of Nala, which is where her mother is, and the house of Axel, which is where her dad was. Her dad is deceased. This main female character grew up as an orphan. So, and then the love interest is between her being freshly awakened and this one guy who's like a couple hundred years old, I want to say. So, because they do live a long time. And one of her best friends in this that she meets, that's also a shaman, is an avid book reader like herself. And so, then it turns out some secrets are being kept by a certain house. There's an impending war looming that everyone feels coming up, and people are just trying to be prepared for that. The sex is wild. In this, I don't remember the guy's name. I want to say it was Dre. I think his name is Dre, the main female lead. Let's just say there was a lot of talk, and this did get annoying. I did end up giving this book 3 stars, and this is why. It became annoying as far as a lot of the talk in the book was how big the male's penis is. Just how big it is and how magical it is because it grows. So that got very redundant, very repetitive, and that to me really kind of pulled the rating down because of all the emphasis on that. It was just overdone. But I still had a good time reading it. So was that the only thing? So vampires, I'm making it fit because vampires tend to be a bigger emphasis around Halloween, and the cover that I'm seeing that's on my Goodreads also has a full moon. So there's a vampire and a full moon. So those are the 2 Halloween items that I say. Okay, so prompt number 3 is to read a book that isn't enemies to lovers. This is one of the physical books, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars, and that's Things I Wanted to Say But Never Did, written by Monica Murphy. This is I would say new adult. They do start out at age 17, and it is explicit with the sex from 17 years old until after high school. This is definitely a bully romance, so like an enemies to lovers, but the sub-genre is bully. So, enemies to lovers, the main female. This is book number 1 in the Lancaster Prep. So she goes to this private school. The main male bully, or the main female, or the main male interest in this is basically his family owns the school, so he can do no wrong. So they have sex all over the school. One night he ends up in her dorm and walks away with her journal, and she doesn't realize it until later, and he uses it as a form of blackmail to blackmail her to come whenever he wants her so that they can have this great sex. They both acknowledge that the relationship between them is very toxic and probably not healthy, and I do agree with that. It is definitely not healthy and is definitely toxic, but they enjoy it and have a good time anyway. So, but there were times where you could see that they were starting to really kind of care for each other, and I really liked seeing those little bits of tender moments that would pop up every now and then. So that's all I'm going to say about this one. I will have the titles of these books and the authors in the description box if you want to check out more information. I just don't want this wrap up to be super, super long. So I'm trying to keep this as concise, short and concise as possible. Okay, moving on is prompt number 4, which is a monster romance. Now, several of these books that I have read, all but the last one I showed you, could count as a monster romance. A guy with a pumpkin head, an alien, and a vampire. All monster romances. And you know what? I realized something. I put Queens and Monsters. Oh, and that was written by India Amare. I have that down covering 2 prompts, so that's not gonna work. Let me see what else I read that was smut. That either has a Halloween or a monster. So let me go to because I've read quite a bit of smut this month. Let's see, Bathed in Golden Blood. Does that have a Halloween? I don't know if I would say, well, I guess it could. I could stretch that one. Okay, you know what? I'm going to switch. Okay, so for Monster Romance, still an ebook, but I'm changing it to one that I gave 4 stars. And so I'm changing this one to Sleeping with Sasquatch. So this is like a cryptid type monster, but Sasquatch, it still is a monster. And this was written by Honey Cummings. And this is also a novella. So I read quite a bit of novellas, had a great time. So this one, her name, the main female lead is Frankie. And I don't remember the male lead other than his name. He's a Sasquatch, and it's a shifter romance. So it's a monster shifter romance. He can be in the form of a human, and then he transforms into a Sasquatch. But basically what happens is Frankie and her boyfriend go to the woods. Her boyfriend is an avid Sasquatch believer and hunter. He wants to see Sasquatch, wants to catch him on camera, so whatever it is. Frankie is basically promised a weekend of fun and excellent sex in the woods, a bunch of it, and things don't go as she wants. So she ends up getting stuck and basically getting an oral job done to her, finds out not her boyfriend, and then figures out who it was. And it turns out it is our male lead, who is the Sasquatch. He is in a predicament. He is basically, the book opens up with him and a bunch of his friends who are all shifters. And he, the main male lead, had a recent breakup. He gets blackout drunk. His friends abandon him in the woods, and he is still stuck in his Sasquatch form. He talks to one of his friends, I think his friend's name is Stash, I want to say, who basically says, you've got to find someone and have a bunch of sex, and that's the only way you're going to get out of your being stuck in the Sasquatch form. So that's basically the story. He sees her. She has a very alluring smell. He talks about how the scent of her is like peaches and cream, or peaches at the very least. She smells like peaches when she is sexually aroused, and how that is very alluring to him. And so her and this Sasquatch main male have a bunch of sex, and it is open doors, so you are getting the explicit smut. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the last prompt. And this is a book that has flowers on the cover. This one is a library book that I read, and that is Battle Royale. This does get sexually explicit, so this does contain the smut. The flowers on the cover, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but she does have little flower barrettes in her hair, so flowers on the cover. This one takes place not in the United States. This takes place in a country where they have royalty. So I think the author's from New Zealand, so maybe it takes place in New Zealand at the very least. My mind goes to England because I know of the king and queen, the whole thing with England. So what has happened is there is a baking show. It's a competition. Think Great British Bake Off, but a little bit more Gordon Ramsay-esque as far as the judging goes. So it's a grumpy sunshine. He's the grumpy, she's the sunshine. When we first open, she is a contestant on the show. He is a judge. Within the next 2 to 3 chapters at the very most, you find out they are both judges for this new season. Obviously, there's sexual tension between them. They both have a baking business. They both will bake cupcakes and cakes and stuff. Their styles are just very different. He is more classic, kind of, just think very classic type decorations with cakes, stripes, polka dots, things like that. She is very much over the top. Think glitters, sparklers, very colorful, and he's not. So, and they start to have feelings, and it scares them both to no end that they're both starting to have feelings for someone. That's pretty much all I can think of to say. I do have, let's see, is there something? Oh, and this is part of a series. It's book 1 out of a series. So far, there's 2 books out. You do have LGBT rep in this. You have, there's talk of someone being a lesbian and talk of someone being asexual. You also have talk of someone having a stammer, and you do see that stammer come out quite a bit. You also have, do be aware, you have loss of a loved one in this, as well as neglect from childhood. And then, so what is also going on in this is that the princess of the royal family is engaged, and there is basically this contest. So not only are they hosting a baking competition, there's a contest between the 2 of them to see who can make a cake that the princess and her fiance will want at their royal wedding. So there's a bit of competition there, and of course the tension builds, and to the point that it breaks and they end up having sex, and it just goes from there. So it was fun. So I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. It was a fun read. So those are the books that I read for Smutober. Let me know, did you participate in Smutober? Talk to me in the comment section below, and if you did participate in Smutober, what was your favorite smutty book that you read? Again, talk to me in the comment section below, and until next time, stay true to yourself and enjoy a good book, and I'll talk to you later.